Especially the way we'd spoken about Ranieri, or he had been spoken about, before he got the job. So you need to make a great start, and of course he got the win, but I think this game was 2-3 up after 20-25 minutes.
3 lap after 25.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what you need, because the pressure and the criticism he was getting, it wasn't just from outside. I think even Leicester fans were looking at thinking, couldn't understand the appointments. Obviously, the previous manager lost his job, and it wasn't something they expected. So you're already thinking, maybe 5 or 6 games in, if it doesn't go well, and the crowd maybe get on his back, or they look to change. That's how sort of the appointment was received by most people. So to get off to that great start was huge for him.
And when people are writing you off, how important then you get off to a start like that, a fast start of the season?
I think it's the be-all and end-all, really, and I think, obviously we'll hear from the Leicester players over the course of time, but I'd like to know what their thought process was going into the start of the season, and no doubt, like Ranieri's it was to get to 40 points, and that was their
main. But also sure to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah,
motivation was there.
Yeah, of course, and the season before they'd come off a good run of games. Obviously, Nigel Pearson had done a good job, and I think their main focus was to stay up. Let's not have a season like we had previously, and let's stay up and let's get off to a good start. And they got the points on the board early on, and then from there, really, it's been on the crest of a wave, really, and it's just snowballed to a point where, before you know it, they started to drink.
So can we go to September now, mid-September? Jamie, you talk about their resilience. This is where we really first saw it. They were 2 down with 18 minutes to go against Villa.
I think this was a huge result for both clubs, really. I don't think we ever recovered from this Aston Villa, but I was at this game, and wasn't in the studio. I was actually in the stadium watching it in the gantry, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. I mean, there's stadiums that you associate with fantastic atmospheres. Leicester probably wasn't one of them until I went there that day. And the things I think the owners have done, the clappers together, and it's almost like a derby game. And to be 2-0 down to Aston Villa, we know how poor Aston Villa were and have been this season. And to turn it round, I think that was the story of their season early on in that season. It wasn't keeping clean sheets, as we're talking about. It was conceding goals and coming back from behind 2-0, they win 3-2. But of course, that's a massive victory for them, and you can imagine that the lift something like that gives them, and the belief whenever they then go behind again that they can come back.
And it was a pattern now, Scott. In October, they went to St Mary's. They were 2-0 down at half-time, being totally outplayed. Mahrez came on for the second half, and they did this with another comeback.
And like Jamie said, it's these moments in games what builds confidence and breeds confidence and starts getting a team and individual players believing that we can do something this year. And like I said, obviously still at this point, Leicester was still contemplating probably staying in the league or at least getting into Europe.
But Jamie Vardy's emerging now. He got 8 in 6. People were starting to sit up and take notice, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. And the story of Jamie Vardy is one which is quite incredible. Obviously, like we said, coming from where he's come from, and like you said, it snowballed in terms of the goals he was scoring, breaking records, and he's been the pinnacle of what Leicester have done, really.
So that game was part of a run for Leicester after an Arsenal game. You remember it end to end, Jamie, the 5-2. Look at this for the 10 results afterwards. Why was that such a turning point?
Well, I think a lot of this season, I think Ranieri's getting the credit he deserves now, but I think you've got to look at that Arsenal game and the defeat, and he changed some things tactically. I think he changed the full-backs. They were a lot more offensive at the start of the season, hence why they were conceding goals. And then I think that's where a lot more of that solidity comes from, in terms of a bit more defensive. You had Simpson there at right back, Fuchs at left back, and now we're talking about this back four that doesn't move, never moves out of position, and that's something he changed. Of course, there was a lot of players there from the previous regime, but that was a big moment for them in changing that. They couldn't keep clean sheets, talking about the pizza, taking long, they got a clean sheet, but he was a major part of that before, because it was just end-to-end goals. It's like you associate two different teams in terms of winning this league. It was a different team at the start of the season to what we're seeing now. It's evolved into this sort of mean machine of keeping clean sheets, nicking things 1-0. Before that, it was very open end-to-end, type of football, and I think Claudio Ranieri, that's the biggest thing he's done, certainly after that game.
There's so many highlights in the season, Scott, but this surely now has to be the moment of the season. The iconic commentary from Martin Tyler as well. It's 11 and heaven for Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the season what we'll all remember as as one of the great parts for not only Jamie Vardy, for Leicester, and like you said, obviously famous for Martin Tyler's commentary and that, and this was probably the start of it. I think this is when people maybe just started to stand up and think, you know what, these could be a force.
And do you remember a big moment came then, Monday Night Football against Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a huge night for Chelsea. Remember Jose's interview, Jose's last game. But the realisation to completely take apart the champions. We knew we hadn't started the season well. Leicester at the top of the league, and you think it's a flash in the pan. Chelsea will go there, do a job on them, and it could have been 5 or 6. They absolutely battered them. And that was, I think, one of those big signs that, I think a lot of the time, when you win games, or you're on a run, or as we've said, you come from behind, it gives you self-belief. I think games like that, when everyone's watching, it's live on TV, and you beat a really big team, I think it sends a message out to the rest of the people watching, the rest of the league. This is not a flash in the panel. This is not a freak result. This is a proper team. Now, no one believed they were going to win the league at that stage, but you thought there's more to this than just, a great start to the season.
They put them on top of the table. Mourinho, as you say, was sacked 3 days later. They then went 3 without a win to White Hart Lane. And was this the results, picking up what Jamie just said there, where they really did start to believe?
Yeah, certainly, and especially coming out of 3 games where you've not won. If ever there was a time when maybe the wheels could have started to come off, it would have been at this point. And to then go to White Hart Lane against a very good Tottenham side and go and get a result was key. And I think, like again, they then stepped on it again and really started to push forward, really.
What a huge result that was when you look back at the win at White Hart Lane. And then again, Jamie, at Manchester City, where I think this is where you said they're the real deal.
Yeah. I think going into that game, I felt they'd win this game going into it. After every team I've played against Man City, if you have energy and pace, you just run over them. I think the legs have gone. And that's what Leicester about. I mean, on his interview before, he said I like the RAF, Ranieri, with the pace of them. But after that game, I thought they were going to win the league. That's what I thought. Again, another big performance. Don't forget, City was still in the running. I think at that stage you're very close. Maybe even if City had won that game, they'd gone above them or got pretty.
Yeah, they extended the lead to 6 points.
Okay,
well, off the back of that,
I think that again, as I said with the Chelsea one, was a message again to everyone. You're going to title rivals away from home, and you're winning, but not just winning and hanging on.
On February the 6th, Valentine's Day, everyone waiting for it to go wrong for Leicester, and then everyone started to say, "This is it. The wobble's begun." When Arsenal scored late.
Yeah, and obviously you remember the game clearly. They held on for some time, 10 men, and then literally at the death, Arsenal go and get the winner, which was. And it's times like this in championships where doubt can set in, doubt can start setting in, and maybe that's where, like I said earlier, maybe things can start tragically going wrong. But full credit to them and whatnot, like they've shown all year. They've shown a real resilience, a real character. These are the words what keep coming up: team spirit, and like I said, it ended up proving that they held on and they come back with some more good results.
But they would be written off after that, weren't they? Arsenal beat them, they were a little bit unlucky, but yet look at the way they responded, Jay. We often talk about response of champions. I mean, that is remarkable, isn't it?
It is, and that's the mentality of those players. As you get later onto the season, of course it's your ability, you've got to go and win games. But when those questions are being asked, you'd automatically think players who've never been at the top end of the table, or who've never been there, would fall away mentally, really, to be weak. I think you see that all the time when the former champions or teams who are up there consistently, they power through a season and they catch you. How many times did Manchester United do that, where they caught someone? You think of the Newcastle one where they'd never been there before, it was too much for them mentally. And how many times they came back from questions we asked? Because we're asking the questions because we want it to be tighter. We want it to be a good,
not been able to stiff, really, has that?
No. And I think, you're looking at how the games fell for them in terms of, Manchester United and Chelsea away. I always thought if they'd have come a bit earlier, they'd have dropped points, could have been a bit tighter. But they've got to a stage now where they don't need the Chelsea game away, which is one of your toughest games. But how many times they answered questions from us, after defeats, or a run of games and they go over Christmas, who said, have they got the squad to cope? And then a run of fixtures of tough games, and they won most of them. So there's
1-0 a lot, wasn't it? Clean sheets.
Well, that's what they did, and how many times, I go back to Manchester United, they talk about 1-0 wins, how important they are. And that's what it was a completely different team. second half of the season, what we've seen, really, and that's where Ranieri takes the credit. But in terms of the actual mentality and what they've had to go through, they've never ever looked nervous. I can't remember a game where you think they were hanging on. Even the West Ham one, they came back and still got the 2-2. It wasn't like they were hanging on West Ham, but the 2-2.
What nerve this man showed at Joe. You talked about Defoe earlier, Jamie, pressure penalty. This was huge.
Of course it was. With everything that got on, it felt like a win. It wasn't down on the points that day. It was a point. But psychologically, that was huge because they'd gone in the dressing room, hugging, as we've seen in the celebrations before, maybe in something similar. They'd gone down to 10 men, 2-1 down, and they get that last minute goal. So that there in adversity in a game to come back, we've said how many times they came back after a draw or a defeat, they responded well, but to respond in the game as well. And I'm just trying to rack my brains and think of a time where I ever thought they looked like they were going to wobble. I can't think of one.
And do you think they were going to wobble at any stage? Were you looking on thinking, this could be it?
Yeah, there was many times, and every time you thought it, they proved you wrong. Every single time you thought, today's the day when I think they're going to have a little wobble out of it. And you know what? I think the main thing for me, and the one who takes massive credit is obviously Ranieri. I think the way he dealt with it psychologically, in terms of, as a manager of a football club, when you're going to face a camera and doing interviews, you're giving out a message. Now, whether that message is to the media, to your fans, or to your players. And I think at times this year, I think he's given a message to his players. And I think he's took a lot of pressure off his players by what he's saying. And if you're in that change room sitting there listening to your manager, like we all do after a game, you sit there, you listen to what your manager's saying. At times this year, for me, he's just took that pressure off him at times and really eased it off and always spoke down about it.